So today's cardinal lesson, we're talking about the 7 worries in retirement. And they're really the 7 worries that we address here at Cardinal. And these go back to really the beginning of Cardinal back in 2010, when after a long career in insurance and financial services that I went in business for myself, and I was the first employee at Cardinal, and I started recruiting people. And it wasn't too long after that that I met Tom, and we developed this thing. But this is our philosophy. These 7 things, these 7 worries, is how we look at retirement planning. They're what people are worried about. They're how we classify problems that you're facing on the horizon in retirement and problems that we can do something about. So let's jump in and talk about what are they. So there's Social Security, Medicare, long-term care, IRAs and 401ks, and specifically money you haven't paid taxes on yet, but that you will. Income and investment. So now you've got this block of money, and how are you going to live off it for the rest of your life and how long that's going to be. Estate planning. So what's going to happen to your stuff and your money after you're gone? What do you want to have happen? And something that people miss out on a lot is, with a married couple, the first benefactor of the estate is the surviving spouse. And if there's 2 of you, you don't really know who the survivor is going to be. And the last one is taxes. And we put taxes at the very end because I just don't want to start with taxes. I find that when people come in and they've got just a total tax focus to the exclusion of everything, it just blurs us and we end up making bad decisions. So we got 7 worries, 7 categories. We don't even know what to call these yet. 7 things after all these years. And in my book, these are the 7 content chapters. And so what we wanted to do today, what we're hoping to accomplish, is present the whole body of work to you. You're going to find over 100 videos on our YouTube channel, and they all fall under one of these 7 categories, or these 7 things. So I want to bring Tom on, and I want him to show you the show notes for today.
Yeah, and so we have these show notes in the link below our video. They're also on our website. They do have a picture of the board as the front page of all the show notes, and we have a lot of people who watch the videos that will print them out, take notes on them. Sometimes they're watching on a phone. It's kind of small, so it's nice to have a little bit bigger picture of that. Today's show notes, though, as we sat down, Hans and I, we were really trying to figure out what should we use as our show notes here. And we just went back to the book because really what, Hans came up with this idea and really prompted the first thing that we really did with this is we were doing the financial plans there, but then he wrote a book that kind of covered these different topics. And so you can find the chapters on our website as well. But what we had, this is the cover page of the book. But in each of the chapters, we have a box at the end of each chapter, really the beginning and end of each chapter, that has a summary of these different areas. And so what we've used in the show notes is really just summarizing some of the key points to consider around these different 7 areas. So we have Social Security, Medicare, long-term care, IRAs, the investments and income planning, and then the estate planning, and then taxes is the last one. So this follows the same order that's in the book. You can read these summaries in the show notes. You can get the book and read the full book. It adds a lot more context than what we'll go over in the video today. But it really serves as sort of the base, DNA of what we do here at Cardinal. And one of the things that we hope to accomplish in this video is really show you how interactive these are, how making decisions in one area can impact another. And you really need to consider all of them together when we're, talking about retirement planning.
Well, yeah, and so we have people come to us all the time, and I think it's kind of like a little game we play. Is that people are generally confused about pieces of it. Some people are really up on everything, but most of the time they're not calling us. And as we're going through this, a lot of people, what we've got to do in the beginning, educating, is we've got to unlearn the stuff they've been told by their brother-in-law, or they heard from some coworker where she was dealing with her sister-in-law, and this happened to her. And we have to unlearn a lot of that stuff because people will blurt it out, and it's like we're sitting there and we say, no, that's part right, But in your situation, it's not right. So a lot of our job is with all these 7 topics is to, at the very beginning, is just to go through all of that stuff that you've taken for granted or that you've accepted with assumptions and make sure that we're not assuming some wrong things. And then if we go through all 7 of these things, I can, in pretty short order, get you up to snuff where you can make decisions about that particular area. That doesn't really take that much. Where we earn our money as financial planners, where we, add value to people is when we look at the whole picture, all 7 of these things, because you're here at the center. I mean, this is your life, your retirement, and your spouse's life and spouse's retirement. And you got all 7 of these things, and the decisions you've made in all 7 areas, it's mixed together like a bowl of vegetable soup. And that's where we earn our money, is getting these things, is first of all making decisions in each one with you and for you, and then looking at the impact on the other one. So I'm going to go through each one of the 7 worries, and I'm going to just share with you a couple of key points, much shorter than what Tom showed in the book. So let's take the first one, is Social Security. I mean, if you're already on Social Security, then this little piece of our whole training, you're already getting your check, isn't going to have a huge amount of value. But a lot of people that come to us, they haven't made their Social Security decisions yet. And many of them come to us with a plan. They're going to say, oh, I'm waiting until 70, or I'm taking it as soon as I'm 65, or I'm this, or I'm that, or my wife's not going to take it, or she took it at 62. So there's a lot of folks that just come to us with a plan. A lot of folks are just kind of like, well, I don't know what to do. Why don't you tell me? And so I'm going to give you a couple of points. One is think long term. What do I mean by that? Think about you in your 80s and 90s. Okay. Think about people you know or you have known, like your parents, aunts and uncles that are older than you, much older than you. And just think about how important that Social Security check was to them. And when I say think long term, this is going to be much more important when you're 85 and 95 or 92, or your spouse is that old and you're long gone, than it is to you right now in your budget. So I'm going to lean, if you can afford to that. What I mean by think long term is delay it as long as it makes sense. I mean, in other words, forego your checks as long as you can so that you can get a larger check that'll get inflated. So when you get really old or your spouse is really old, that you'll have a larger check. And I want to hear what Tom has to say about that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people view this as some type of game almost. It's like I need to get the most out of the system as I can. And I don't think that's necessarily the wrong way to think about it. But if we kind of go through and follow that same idea of thinking, is if you take it early and you've reduced your check for the rest of your life, you just, okay, we're getting money now, and then you do live a long life. The impact of having that reduced check at those later years can be really impactful. It can really make it harder to live, especially if you don't have the savings to back up, additional income. Whereas if you delay the check, maybe you have money you can live off of. You can afford to delay it. The impact of not having the check now does not really impact your life currently, but it makes it much easier to have that longer retirement. And so, yes, we want to consider life expectancy. We want to not leave money on the table, but we need to think about the chances of you do living a long life, especially with medicine getting better. People are living longer anyways. Getting a higher check for the rest of your life could be really helpful. I do want to just make the point is if you really need the money, we're not saying you should delay it if you need the money. If you come to us, you don't have a lot of savings, maybe you got laid off from work and you're looking at, I don't have anywhere else to go. Absolutely take the money. I mean, it's there. It's very helpful. Don't view this as you have to delay it. But for the people who have a choice, who can afford to delay it, really consider delaying it because I think it is very impactful.
And then in the same vein, spouse survivor.
Right.
I mean, you may sit here and say, well, the men in my family or the women in my family or my family, they don't live a long time. So I don't really think that I'm going to live long enough to really benefit. I don't think I'm going to make it into my 80s and 90s. Well, first of all, you may not be right about that just because of modern medicine, like Tom said. But the other thing is when there's two people, husband and wife, on a Social Security checks in the plural, and then when the first one dies, the smaller check goes away. They go down to one check. So if you're the larger earner, if you delay and then start collecting at a later age and then pass away before you've really made up for what you've lost by delaying, your spouse, your surviving spouse, is going to live off of your check maybe up into their 90s. So you'll notice that spouse survivor is under a lot of these things. So we don't want to get too hung up on one topic, but think long-term, spouse survivor, and then think about the income taxes that you're going to pay on your Social Security check when you do file for it, because we're thinking about it. And so those are the three things under Social Security. Now let's jump to Medicare. So really the first decision with Medicare, and that you'll need to make continuously, because you can go back and forth under some circumstances, do I want to be on original Medicare? And then do I want to purchase insurance as a supplement to that? And that's going to cost me a little more. Or the other choice is, do I want to go on managed care, which is Medicare Advantage? That's going to cost me less, but it's going to limit my choices. And so we have other videos that are going to get into this at length, but this is a fundamental decision that you need to make. And I'm going to tell you, the people with more resources and that have money are going to lean more toward the original Medicare and buying insurance as a supplement. It doesn't mean everybody. And the people which are counting every dollar, and they have to, this is a good option. So I don't want to talk about these in good or bad. I just want to point out is this is the first thing you need to be thinking when you're coming up on Medicare, or while you're on Medicare. Do I want to be on a Medicare Advantage plan, or do I want to be on a original Medicare? Now, next point is IRMAA. So IRMAA is income-related monthly adjustment amount. And you don't have to be rich to fall under IRMAA, because right now in 2023, they're using your 2021 tax return to calculate IRMAA. So you could have been working, you could have gotten a retirement distribution in 2021, some other way that you made a significant amount of money that threw you into IRMAA, and now you have a lower income in 2023, but yet you're paying for it. There's ways to appeal this. So it's just something. And the other thing, the people that do fall under IRMAA, when we're dealing with them when they're turning 65, a lot of times they're hearing about this first from us. So let's just put that on the list of things that we want to put as a priority. The other thing is the timing of your sign up for Medicare Part B is, when do you want to sign up? And then the penalties that are involved if you make a mistake. So when I'm just talking Medicare, is there anything you want to throw in here, Tom?
No, I mean, I think we might get into this a little bit later, but when we thinking about how these interrelate, decisions around Social Security could impact IRMAA as well. The money coming in could impact that, as well as any IRA distributions or things like that. So we'll get that a little bit later. But I think the three we've listed are some of the, if we had to just boil it down to the three main considering or decisions or things to consider, I think we've done a good job at those three.
Okay, worry number 3, long-term care. And this isn't a worry that's top of mind. This is like bottom of mind. People are stuffing this. And again, this is one that people turn into a game. I don't know if I'm going to use it. I might not. And it's just, this is your life we're talking about. And this is going to be real important to you at the most vulnerable time for you and your family. So the first thought that I'm going to tell you is, think about your family, and think about your family as your caregivers, because family are the most common caregivers. And if that caregiver is your spouse and you don't use care till you're 85 and you're relying on your family, which most people do. I mean, that's the first person you look to is your spouse. They're going to be 85 too, or 82 or 83 or whatever. Think about your family and think about caregivers and think about whether you want your family to go through that, because many times when we have a couple and one of them gets sick and needs care and care with simple things and the activities of daily living, we can end up with two sick people after a period of time just with the stress of providing care to your spouse. Same thing with adult children is, what are they going to do? Give up their lives? Um, some of you may have done that for your parents, but completely give up your life to go move in with your parents or have them move in with you, and then you're going to be the round the clock caregiver. I just want you thinking about that stuff. And next point, crisis decisions. I mean, if people don't plan for this or they reject planning because they think we're trying to sell them insurance and they just are stubborn that they don't want to buy insurance or they don't even want to hear about it, or they brush it off with some simple decisions. I mean, what you're doing is you're putting off decision making, putting off your education about long-term care till the worst possible time. And that's when you've had a stroke or you've had a fall, or maybe you should have investigated long-term care and home health care a year or two ago, but you just put it off. And now there's some crisis that happened, that mom fell and nobody got to her for a day or that kind of thing. That creates a crisis. All the family flies in, and now we're making all the financial decisions. So just think about a crisis, if it happens, is that when you want to do your long-term care planning? And then think about the spouse survivor. I mean, it's just that spouse survivor is just going to keep showing up, because now if you're relying on your spouse to take care of you and then you get sick, your spouse does take care of you, and then you pass away, who's going to take care of the spouse that's now weakened because they've done these years of care, but now they live alone? And just think about that. So, with the whole issue of long-term care, many folks just kind of think Medicare is going to pay for that, and they don't. So I want to hear what you got to say, Tom.
Yeah, and I think on that last one, the spouse survivor, the other thing that we'll hear pretty often is like, "Oh, my husband or my wife, they'll help take care of me." And I think that's pretty short-sighted. And they haven't really thought through what that actually looks like. I mean, if you're in your 80s and your spouse is of similar age, they're in their 80s too, they're going to be under no condition to help take care of you in that sense. And then if they are doing it, they're putting themselves in a position that they're going to either get sick, they could get injured trying to do things that they're not qualified to do. I mean, I think it's pretty short-sighted to count on that. And then it's also, you want to consider, do you really want to put your spouse in the position that they have to provide that kind of care, if that's kind of the default position. And I think the same thing goes for kids. I mean, we have a lot of clients who are single, maybe they're divorced or widowed, and it's the kids that are going to take on that responsibility. And this happens kind of almost at the worst possible time in their lives. They're in their working years, they're trying to save, they're trying to put their kids through school, and all of a sudden they have to pause everything to take care of mom or dad. It can be really difficult on the family. So I think just think through, what if this were to happen, what this does to your family.
Yeah. So we think about the crisis. I'm telling you, when you get in the crisis, what your family is going to do is they're going to throw all the money you have at the problem. Okay. And we're talking about a lot of money here. So your first choice is going to be to stay at home. That's mine, if in any way possible. And that's bringing in care. That's very expensive, but it's how I want to get it. And think what that's going to do to your budget to have $5, $6, $7, $8,000 a month of additional expense coming at you. Okay. And so the retirement income, if you have a lot of money, you need a lot of money to shoot off that kind of income in addition to your other expenses. We have ways to solve this problem actually using IRA money. So we could take a chunk of IRA money, like $100,000 a person, so it's no small amount, 200,000 for a couple, maybe less than that if we want to buy a policy with more kind of limited benefits, still a very good policy, but we can use IRA money and just move it over without paying the taxes to an insurance company that's going to slowly drip that money into a long-term care life insurance policy. So I don't want to get into the details of that, but all these subjects work with and against each other, or for each other, all to a good end.
When it's also related to estate planning, right? I mean, if you don't plan for it, you're going to end up spending your own money to get the care. I mean, one thing that's going to happen is you're going to get the care that you need if you're sick. I mean, we don't have people living on the streets. I mean, there's some, but by and large, people are going to get taken care of. But that could really impact, maybe you have a desire to leave a legacy to the next generation, and that gets spent up on long-term care, or you want to leave the house to the kids, and all of a sudden, you have to sell it to pay for the care. I mean, there's all sorts of implications of not planning for that can have on the whole plan.
Most of the time, the kids don't want you saving the money for them. They want you to spend it on yourself to make sure you're well taken care of. That's what you have the money for. And then whatever's left goes to them. You bring up a good point with the estate planning. So when we jump down to IRAs and 401ks, just as a general matter of speaking, begin your distributions earlier than the government tells you to. And by that, I'm meaning that if you start viewing this IRA or 401k as a big bunch of money that you haven't paid taxes on yet, and then you start viewing it that you want to pay your taxes a little bit at a time over your whole retirement, that's going to make the tax rate much less than just putting off a problem. So just as a general rule of thumb, think about beginning your distributions of your IRAs and think about converting some of those distributions to a Roth IRA in your 60s and then into your 70s, so that by the time you get older, you've got a significant amount of money where you've already paid the taxes on it. So just generally speaking, start them earlier. Think about the Roth, and I'll kind of leave it at that. We have a lot of videos about Roths, and it's just, it's a tough thing to actually increase taxes for people. I mean, a lot of people say, I came to you to reduce my taxes, not to increase my tax bill. And I say, yeah, but we're reducing your taxes over the long run, and we're reducing the taxes that your spouse is going to pay after you die, and reducing the taxes that your children are going to pay on their inheritance. But we are increasing your taxes in the current year with a little bit of a radical way of thinking, utilizing the Roth. And the question with Roth is not if or yes or no, it's a question of how much and when. QCD, qualified charitable distribution, at 70 and a half and older, you can donate money directly from your IRA to a qualified charity, and you completely avoid taxation on that. You don't pay any taxes. You get credit for the minimum distribution, and the charity doesn't have to pay taxes. So it's something to think about. And then, obviously income tax is a big part of your retirement planning, is to be smart about it. So Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at most of our clients, most people in the country who have savings, a lot of it is in accounts that have not been taxed yet. 401ks, IRAs, that's where their savings are. And so there's a problem that is looming for most people, is that you have this account that's never been taxed, that at some point is going to get taxed. I mean, I think people get into this idea that, well, I have all this money, I don't want to spend some of it on taxes. Well, all of that money isn't yours. I mean, there is essentially a lien on it. The IRS has a lien on that account that at some point they're going to get paid. And then it's just the question how much and how quickly and when. And when you're in control of it, you can make better decisions when you just leave it up to what their default plan is, because they have an incentive to, they want to get paid as well. And so if we can be in more control over that, and that relates to Social Security, you might do Roth conversions while delaying Social Security to keep your taxes low. Then from a tax standpoint, we'll get that over on the right side at the end. But then you have lower taxes on your Social Security. I mean, there's decisions that get impacted by a lot, and I agree with your early statement. Is we'd really suggest people start withdrawing earlier than what their overall plan would be.
I mean, the IRA affects just about everything on the page. I mean, it affects the taxes you pay on your Social Security check. It's available to buy long-term care with. Okay, so that kind of shuts that down. People say I can't afford it. Well, yeah, you got this big IRA. We can use part of it to fund long-term care. The distributions affect IRMA. So spreading that out and smoothing them out now can prevent you from having a gigantic IRMA from required minimum distributions in your later years. The IRA is where we produce income, and so is the Social Security check. So, when we're building an income for people, all of these 7 worries come into place, and this whole world, since we've gotten over to income, what I want people thinking about is their lifetime. So when I talk about thinking long term, I mean, you told you that with Social Security. Lifetime means when we start reducing the principal of your savings and your investments, I mean, it's easy to spend the interest unless it's this year. If you've made no interest on, or last year, during 2022, if you've effectively made no gain, you've had a negative, how are you going to live off of that? But when we start talking about dipping into the principal, then we want to be careful that we don't dip in too much or that we preserve some of it separately. Because when you get into your 80s and 90s, you don't want to have spent all your money and then live longer than that. That's a big problem. That's a big worry. And one of the ways we do that is with income annuities. With part of your money, an insurance company can guarantee they're going to send you or your spouse a check as long as you're alive, even if the fund runs out of money. I mean, that's a tool that we have, not right for everybody. So under income, I want you to think about inflation, especially after this year. So we're going to certainly think about it when we're constructing a long multi-year income plan. And always thinking about the spouse survivor. I mean, a lot of pensions go away or cut in half when you pass away or the primary passes away. And one of the Social Security checks is going to go away when we have the spouse survivor. At the same time, tax rates are going to go up. So when we're doing an income plan, we're thinking about Social Security, we're thinking about IRA, 401k, we're thinking about taxes. Now, next topic, estate planning. Number one, I want you thinking about is incapacity. I want you thinking about long-term care. People think about estates, they think, well, isn't the estate after I die? Well, yeah, but it also exists for a period where you're incapacitated, where you're not making the decisions. We need to plan for that. And we need to plan areas of income, who's going to keep you up, who's going to take you to medical appointments, how's that going to all work out, and who's going to make the decisions for you financially. And, how are people going to manage your estate while you're still alive or while your spouse is still alive and incapacitated? So that's the first topic that I want you thinking about. And again, we're at the spouse survivor. I mean, we're thinking about that's the first benefactor of the estate is how's your spouse going to live on in your absence? Or how are you going to live on in your spouse's absence? And what's your tax rate going to be? What are your sources of income? What is your need for long-term care? What's going to be your housing? These are all estate planning considerations. And then we've got up here avoiding probate. And, we're not going to give that too much time, but we generally have ways that we can stop the bulk of whatever you have. It can pass to your children and grandchildren, to your surviving spouse without going through the probate process. Or maybe you'll have to do that for the house, but many other things we can take care of with beneficiaries. And then the last section is taxes. And we put that in, number one I've put up here, know your bracket. What do I mean by that? So Tom, what do I mean by that?
Yeah, and so, everyone, or not everyone, but most people have heard of tax brackets, and the tax rates get higher the more income you have. And so people sort of generally know that's how that works. But if you really ask them, okay, what tax bracket are you currently in? Most people wouldn't be able to tell you the answer to that. And so it's helpful to know where you stand in there and where the top of that bracket is, because that, when we're talking about doing things with Roth conversions or taking distributions out of your IRAs, if there's room left in the current tax bracket, there was reason to maybe fill that up, especially in the tax rates we're in currently are very low, historically low. And so let's try to fill up these lower brackets, and get money out of this in these lower tax brackets when we know under the current law in 2026, these tax rates are going back up. I mean, they're increasing under the current law, and they could go higher in the future. And so when we say know your brackets, know where you currently are, know what those brackets are, and just know, is there reason, is there ways to take advantage of the brackets and in a smart way, an intelligent way, start withdrawing money out of these accounts.
I had a gentleman call me yesterday, actually, and he said, I'm in a decision, I'm doing a Roth conversion, and I'm deciding whether I'm going to fill up the 22% bracket, which I know I'm going to do, or am I going to go to the 24% bracket? And he quoted me the numbers. He got that off of our video. So I thought that was pretty flattering, where people are watching our stuff. We've got a bunch of other videos talking about the brackets of the year we're in. So if we really want to dig into that, go there, okay, or call us. Spouse survivor, this is overlooked, is when you look at those tax brackets, married filing jointly, they're pretty wide. When you become a single taxpayer, which is the year after the death of your spouse, tax rates go up or brackets become much more narrow. So I'm going to leave it at that. And people, that's happening at the same time you go from one Social Security or two Social Security checks down to one. So think about that with taxes. And then think about the Medicare and Social Security taxes. I mean, you're probably going to have to pay some tax on your Social Security if you have other income. But if you can limit that other income and get a lot of your income out of a Roth or some other area, you can reduce that or perhaps eliminate taxes on your Social Security check. So know what that stuff is. And then know about, this is IRMA showing up again. IRMA is really a tax, and it's based upon your taxable income. So we've probably dug in a little more detail than I wanted to on this video, but with the whole thing that I want you to get is this is a whole big picture. And when you look at our YouTube site, it's got 7 worries and 7 sections and a whole bunch of videos under each section. And they're getting at little pieces of these sub points. And what I want you to do is kind of get the whole picture of this is what we do here at Cardinal. And just about everybody that comes in, there's some people that come in, we just sell them a Medicare supplement and send them on their way, or a Medicare Advantage plan. But we at least attempt to talk to them about all 7 things. And we'll give you some help on this stuff, even if you're just coming to us about one thing. But if we do a financial plan for you, we're going to be looking at all 7 of these things. So I'm going to skip checking all the boxes, because certainly today we've checked all the boxes. We got them all marked out. So I'm Hans Scheil.
And I'm Tom Griffith.
And we thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.